Meantime, Bernie Sanders is claiming victory in Iowa. CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe asked the Vermont senator how he thinks he pulled it off.
And was there something specific, you talk about a multiracial grassroots movement in Iowa, was there something specific you did in Iowa, either targeting a certain community or a certain part of the state, that you anticipate doing again down the road in the other states?
Look, the whole thrust of what our campaign is about is to understand that in America we have one of the lowest voter turnouts of any major country on earth. That's what we do. And the reason for that are manyfold. One of them is that a whole lot of working class people here in New Hampshire, Vermont, all over this country, they're working 2 or 3 jobs. They can't afford child care. They're spending half of their income in housing. They can't afford to send their kids to college. And they are saying, who is concerned about me? I turn on the TV and I hear all this blabber. Is anybody worrying about me and that I'm going to retire at 65 and I don't have anything in the bank for retirement? Anyone worried about me? Or is it just the billionaires and the wealthy who determine what goes on in Washington? And a lot of those people say it's all nonsense. We're not going to vote. Why do I want to waste my vote? The whole system is so corrupt.
And Ed O'Keefe joins me now from Manchester, New Hampshire. Ed, I understand you spoke more about this with Bernie Sanders' senior advisor, Chuck Rocha, while you were in Iowa?
That's right. Look at those results. We're talking about, a 4-figure difference between Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg. And the Sanders campaign knew going into Iowa, despite his claims today that he doesn't think this is a fair process, that it's a confusing one, that they would have to find every single solitary person possible to show up to caucus. And one of the ways they did it was by targeting minority communities in a state that doesn't have too much of one, specifically Latino households in Muscatine, there on the banks of the Mississippi River, and in the Des Moines area. People who work in agriculture, who work in some of the meat and chicken processing plants in that state, and have other jobs that have brought them to the state and now made them residents and in some cases citizens. And we talked to Chuck Rocha, who's been in politics for several decades and focuses especially on turning out Latino voters, how he was going to do that in a predominantly white state. Take a look.
And the senator said this from the very first time in Brooklyn when we kicked off the campaign, is we need to get new people to show up to vote. And a big part of getting new people to show up to vote are marginalized communities who folks normally don't go talk to. And I say folks, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, you don't see them going on college campuses and really trying to get young people to vote, going into Latino neighborhoods with bilingual communications, asking them to vote, telling them about the Iowa caucuses. So we really want to do something different at the instructions of the senator to make sure that we were doing everything as a campaign to go out and reach new, diverse communities and ask them to participate.
You've worked to completely change the way campaigns talk to minority voters.
True.
What's so different about what you're trying to do?
You've never seen an operation that went into communities early and spent money early. I've been on the outside of campaigns for 30 years throwing rocks at candidates who looked past the black vote, looked past the brown vote, and just talked to us at the very end. We've been very intentional about this work at the direction of the senator to go into these communities early and talk to them early. So the key is going there, spending money, and hiring people from that community to talk to that community. That's going to change us forever. So if I told you that we were doing all this work without a Latino department, you would say I was crazy. But we don't have a Latino department at the headquarters or in the Iowa office. We've integrated that into every piece of the operation.
And I guess that's the difference, is that normally a campaign launches, either it's a statewide campaign or a national campaign, and they launch the communications shop. And a few weeks later they announce, here's our Hispanic media director, here's our black media director, here's our LGBTQ media director. What you're saying is that you guys have done that completely differently, at least when it comes to Latinos.
I'd say we've done
you're just integrating it.
Absolutely. I'd say that the same with African-American outreach in South Carolina. The woman who we've hired to do the mail in South Carolina is a black woman who owns her own shop. 83% of our staff in South Carolina are African-American. 79% of those folks are from South Carolina. This is the formula to actually win, but it's really never been done like this before. It's been done in little segments, but we've looked at this as a totality. This is the way to organize in the community. Bernie Sanders wants us in the community, talking to the community, so we've hired folks from the community who look like the community to talk to the community.
How are you going to do this in Nevada or California?
I think you expand. I think you expand into those places. I would start by saying in Nevada, the first time we opened up an office in Nevada, we opened it up in East Las Vegas, in the heart of the Latino community. That was the first. That tells the community Bernie Sanders is here, he's in our community, and we are a priority. So that means a lot to a Latino voter. The first time we sent a paid communication in Nevada, just like in Iowa, was in Spanish. I think you need to go into those communities and invest and make sure people know that you're for real and not just using Latinos as window dressing.
And the proof, Elaine, that that Latinos weren't just window dressing in Iowa, Chuck told us that the first piece of campaign literature that was sent to voters in Iowa was not sent to everyone, or not sent to union households, not sent to mothers or fathers. It was sent specifically into Latino neighborhoods to talk about Sanders' own unique immigrant story, his father being from Poland. And in English and Spanish, that mailer said to them, I understand the immigrant experience. I'm going to be concerned about it. I'll be campaigning to make changes. And look, again, given how narrow this victory was, the Sanders team would argue their policy, their program, the strategy of reaching Hispanic households worked.
Really?
And will work again, even bigger, in Nevada and California in a few weeks.
Yeah, really fascinating to hear that conversation, Ed. It will be interesting to see how that does work in those other states. Ed O'Keefe for us. Ed, thank you.